high plains of the Midwest, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever your time zone might be. My nod to the late and great Art Bell. I'm Keith Sharp.
And I'm G. Dressel.
And we welcome you to Life After Life, a paranormal webcast where we talk about the paranormal, UFOs, or the unexplained. And the biggest question of them all, what happens when we die? Stay tuned. Hey, good evening, everybody.
I'm so excited.
He's so excited. Well, this is our, because of Garrett, this is our, third, fourth Bigfoot show.
Dude, I love it. What was I like beforehand?
You didn't believe in Bigfoot at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Hey, I wanted to give a shout out to Susie Heath. Hey, thank you so much. Last week, you gave us a super chat or you donated or something. And we were just paying attention to the show. But thank you so much, Susie. That was awesome of you. We really appreciate it.
You didn't say thank you in the show?
You're such an ass. Well, no, I didn't. I did not see the. I honestly didn't see it, or I would have said something. But
is that why Pam's not here? Did you fire her?
Yeah, I got rid of Pam because I told Pam, I said, anytime someone let me know. Yeah, because we can throw up on screen, right?
We got all the OGs in tonight.
Yeah, we do. So Patrick, Susie. How you doing? Susie, of course. Lipsha.
Susie.
So we're going down to Savannah.
Mona
will be, I'm sure. Bubba Randy, Gigi's in here. Hey, Gigi, good to see you. Hey, I sent you a message, Gigi. I don't know if you got it or not, but anywho. All right, so yes, tonight's going to be one of those fun episodes. Again, we are looking into the Bigfoot phenomena.
Dude, and we got Gus G on.
And we have Gus G, who's been studying the Bigfoot phenomena himself for how many years? I don't know. We'll ask him.
Hey, but his podcast is awesome. I listen to it all day today, man.
Yeah, we'll let him plug that for everybody. And yeah, I gotta listen to that. I just hadn't had a chance. I've been busy at work, but I will add that. But we're gonna go ahead and bring Gus G on now. Hey, Gus.
Hey, Keith. How you guys doing?
What's up, Gus?
What is up?
Not a whole lot. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time to be on our little show here. We appreciate it.
Gus, did you like the song that I was using for the Instagram, the Sasquatch song?
You know what? I sure did. I actually downloaded it onto my phone and I was jamming out to it as I was driving home from work the other day. I was like, watch out for
you have a Bigfoot song?
I found this amazing Bigfoot song. It's like comes from the Northwest and his
really
soft little hands picking berries. And
is it like
it's like a folky song.
A folk, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Satire or just
no,
real?
No, yeah, folky. Yeah, because this Bigfoot stuff goes a long ways back. That's the one thing Gus and I were talking about the other night.
I remember seeing Legend of Boggy Creek. Have you ever seen that, Gus?
I saw bits and pieces of it. I know that it was on, I believe, Netflix up here, Amazon Prime or Tubi or something like that. A couple years back, and I remember watching just part of it. And actually, while I was watching part of it, it actually was taken off the server website. So I got about I want to say a quarter of it. And then
this is how old I am, Gus. I saw it at the drive-in movies back in the 70s.
That is fantastic.
But I was just, again, when I was a little kid.
So what is it?
It's basically, because my.
Are you okay?
I'm poking a hole in my. Well, no,
coffee.
I just stab my coffee because if I don't, there's not an air hole.
Yeah. I got you. Okay.
I don't get the smooth flow of the coffee. Okay.
So what is this movie now?
It is about Boggy Creek, which is in Arkansas. As you know, a lot of my family members live in Arkansas, and there's a lot of hills out there. There's a lot of Bigfoot sightings out there. And it's basically, it's kind of loosely based on a true sighting, but with Bigfoot actually attacking the house these people are in, and busting through the window, and and usually Bigfoot's a kind of a peaceful natured creature,
right.
But it's just and it's one of those. It's the acting is so bad in this movie. It's like it's like if we just went down my street and grabbed some neighbors and go, hey, I want to put you in a movie
called Boggy.
It's the acting's that bad. But it was huge at the time,
right? Because
Bigfoot was just starting to really build some momentum,
right,
in the 70s. And this is probably 73, 74,
right,
early. And then Bigfoot exploded in the 70s when I remember being a kid growing up. And remember, I say kid because I'm not that old, right?
You're not that old. So, Gus, when did it start for you?
My interest in Bigfoot kind of started, I want to say when I was about 9 or 10. There was a show up here in Canada called Mystery Hunters. And it was these two kids, they would just go and investigate ghosts or, monsters or whatever. And there was an episode on Bigfoot. And these guys ended up going to, I believe it was Northern California, and they ended up call blasting and, investigating kind of pictures and videos of Bigfoot. And I was like, that sounds really, really cool.
Right.
And, the more research I did, this is back in I want to say 2004, 2005. As I did more research into it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I thought it was just kind of like a show for kids.
Right.
Kind of a show based off of folklore. It was like something, let's do a show about unicorns kind of thing.
Right.
And I never really took it that seriously. And then back in 2008, we'll fast forward. I was about 14 or 15 years old. I went on a camping trip with a friend of mine and his dad in the experimental lakes of northeastern Ontario. And one night I remember being awoken by what sounded like a woman getting murdered. I mean, It was like a primal scream.
Wow.
And it went on for about 20 minutes and it scared me to death.
Did your fellow campers hear it?
No, they were all fast asleep. I've always been a very, very light sleeper.
Right.
So I woke up and this thing was very far away. I want to say at least, 5-6 miles away. But I mean, it was fairly hilly where we were. And because we were surrounded by lakes, I mean, noise travels really well across water.
Yeah.
So I guess it was on one of the mainlands and we were just camping out on one of these small islands. And I just remember hearing this scream and it terrified me to death. And I remember, kind of shaking it off. I was like, oh, it must have been, fox or whatever. Or something, it just sounded kind of human. I went home after that camping trip. And later that week, I remember cruising through YouTube and just kind of listening to creepy animal sounds in the woods. And I listened to bear, I listened to moose, fox, mountain lion, elk, deer, all that kind of stuff, right? And then finally in the suggested, there was this one that said possible Bigfoot noises. And as soon as I clicked it, I listened to it. About 11 to 12 seconds in, I remember jumping out of my chair because it sounded exactly what I had heard.
What? Right.
And the obsession is, as I've just gone down that rabbit hole ever since.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what was the defining moment? I mean, for a kid that age, that would be something that is, quite defining, right? Being by yourself and hearing that.
Definitely. I mean,
it'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah. Terrifying. I mean, if you're a 14, 15-year-old kid, for sure.
Yeah.
But I remember, the defining moment for me was definitely wanting to know what made that sound, what that was. And the more research I did, the more information I found. And a little bit, seemed to, and still does seem fairly far-fetched, but the more research I do, into the idea of making calls out in the woods and making wood knocks and gifting items and leaving scent chips or leaving bait somewhere. Sometimes you get lucky, right? It's a lot like hunting or fishing, right? So, you throw your line out, you hope for the best, and sometimes you get a big catch, or sometimes you go home empty-handed. That's the name of the game.
Right.
But that would probably be it for me.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So we did talk. I was talking to Keith about the gifting thing earlier, and I actually had you send me that rock.
Yes.
Yeah, are you familiar with Robert Morgan?
Robert Morgan. The name does ring a bell.
Yeah, he's like a huge Bigfoot dude. I think he's been on Finding Bigfoot, and he was also, we'll talk about this Art Bell thing. I was going to share that with you later. But yeah, he's like a huge Bigfoot guy. I was just wondering if you've heard of him.
It does sound familiar. Does he have a YouTube channel or anything like that?
No, unfortunately, he had a Facebook, and unfortunately, last thing I heard is he's 86 years old now, and he's in a nursing center. So,
poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy.
But we talked about him in the past because he was the one. Is he not the guy that was gifting?
Yes, that's what I was getting at. I was getting ready to say, but you interrupted me.
Well,
but no, just joking. No, yeah, he did the same thing, Gus. He said that these animals would leave him like little gifts out in, and I think have you heard the recordings of what they thought were Bigfoots talking to each other?
Samurai chatter, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, and
yes.
I want to say that was one of his recordings. Maybe.
Yeah, because I remember he had a recording.
Yeah.
Where is he based out of? Do you know? Is it somewhere in the southeast US?
I do not. I will, but after the show, I'll send you a link to some of his stuff.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
But he's like the godfather of Bigfoot.
So did you because I mean, the thought of like this gifting thing, when you and I talked about it the other night, I was kind of telling you, like, did you like research if that's something possible, or is it something that you just like an idea you came up with to try to further your research?
It's been Native Americans have been doing this thing called gifting. They have another name for it, but the proper word just escapes me right now. But it's basically where they would leave out food on the edge of their land and kind of say, all right, this is our land. We respect you. So here's a gift and you stick to your end.
Gotcha. Peace offering.
You have your area that you live in. I have my area that I live in. And it was kind of like a sign of respect, mutual respect for both of them. And I kind of got introduced to gifting, I want to say within the last 5-6 years. I had done research on it. And there's a woman, I believe she's based out of Oregon, somewhere on the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken. And she's got a farmland where these creatures have been visiting her yearly for about 30 years. It's a family that inhabits like just on the edge of her property. She's got about 12, 13 acres of land. And it's a lot. It's a big, thick brush out behind her house. Wow. And she said she had seen these creatures regularly. They never really caused a problem. Nothing like, they didn't come up to the house and, break things or anything like that. They kind of just, kept to themselves. And she was like, yeah, I just thought nothing of it really. And she had done some research on Bigfoot, and she had realized that the way to get on their good side would be leave them gifts. So that's, food or some kind of gift or offering.
What do they eat? Are they? They're not carnivores, are they?
They are. The theory is.
Wow.
So I actually did a interview with a guy. Well, I don't want to say an interview. I had gone to Minnesota a few years back, and while I was there at Reamer, Minnesota, big shout out to Reamer, Minnesota, the Bigfoot capital of the world for anybody that's listening.
Awesome.
They had a Bigfoot festival that day, coincidentally, that I arrived. And I was on my way back to Canada after visiting my friends and family in Minneapolis. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a cruise through this town. And I ended up chatting with this guy, and he said his daughter and his daughter's boyfriend or friend, I believe, were just out for a walk. And they saw a deer across this lake, and they were just looking at it. And then within a split second, a Sasquatch came out, grabbed the deer, broke its neck, and then carried it back off.
Oh my God.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I always thought they were just plant eaters.
No, definitely not. There's lots of encounters and stories that I've heard of them, carrying off dead deer and all that kind of stuff up into, trees. And it makes sense, because it's like me and Garrett were talking about on one of our previous Bigfoot shows, like with the muscle that they have, they've got to be eating some major protein,
right.
And absolutely.
Game.
Yeah.
Game. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Hey, so I wanted to get back to the gifting thing, because you told me the other night that you thought about was it going to the zoo and looking at like the orangutans? Is that what it was?
It was monkeys. They were always, I remember going, I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I remember seeing, I think there were some kind of African monkeys. I can't remember, but they were on the smaller side. Anyway, I remember them see like the zookeepers had kept like, toddlers' toys in there, kind of like the ones that have like reflective pieces, or, you push a button and something pops out, kind of like a Jack in the Box sort of thing.
Right.
So basic bright colors, all that kind of stuff to draw a child's attention. And I had done some research, and I went to just a thrift store and bought a bag of toys that were like, had McDonald's toys and just smaller items there for about $1 or $2. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go leave this out somewhere. And then also, leave some snacks, some chocolate bars and all that kind of stuff just on this rock. And it was right on the edge of this trail. And I left it there about 2 weeks ago. And then I came back one day and I found this beautifully colored rock that you can see here with the swirls all over it, just placed in the exact spot where I'd left everything else. There were no toys around. There was no, sign of garbage or anything like that. It was all gone.
I got it on. Can you see it? I got it on screen. Can you see it?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's almost like they carved these designs into it.
Yeah.
Which almost, has its own kind of, there's a UFO and Bigfoot connection with some people, with that kind of, those markings,
right?
Look kind of like alien.
It looks extraterrestrial.
Well, it does. Man, is it just a regular rock? Have you had it tested? Did it come from Earth or?
No, I haven't. I found it on that rock, and I haven't looked into getting it tested. It was just something I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
You might want to get that tested.
Sorry?
You might want to get that tested, Gus. Yeah. You could be onto something here.
I haven't gotten sick yet, Jen.
Okay, so, good.
No radio.
Yeah, it looks like they actually took the time to like carve the. And does it look, Gus? Does it look like it was formed like that, or does it look like they actually did carve designs in it?
No, it definitely looks like it was formed like that. It's
okay.
Where I am is there's a very there's a lot of different layers of different sediment and all that kind of stuff. So you do get a variety of rocks, and Alberta, Canada, where I'm from, is very well known for its different kind of rocks, and it's well known for its oil sands and all that kind of stuff. So there are different types of layers of.
You mentioned that you put it next to a trail, so the obvious, argument to that, somebody would say, well, obviously, like some hikers came across, but my argument to that would be humans aren't the nicest people in the world, so they'd probably just take the toys and the snacks and not leave a beautiful rock.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and that was the thing, right? Is we don't know for sure, so I never jump to conclusions. I'm a very black and white type of thinker in that sense,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there when it happened. I didn't see, Bigfoot come by and take all those toys, have a heyday because he was all those snacks, and leave me a rock by any means. It was just something that was there, and I thought that was really peculiar and interesting. So I took the rock with me, and I consider it a gift from them.
So, and you also mentioned that none of the toys were left, right? Like they weren't on the ground, they weren't like spread out. Like somebody literally, something took every single one of the toys, correct? And Candy?
Correct.
Wow.
Leave nothing behind.
Yeah.
So unless there were some, 4-year-old, 5-year-old kids coming by, I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Is it a well-hiked trail? I mean, is there?
It's a fairly well-hiked trail. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Last summer when I started going, I'd never seen anybody on that trail. And now this year I've gone about 6 or 7 times, and almost every single time I've seen cars parked at the area of this trail, but I have never encountered anybody, with a young child. It's always been just one guy on his own riding a bike.
Right.
And there was another gentleman who was walking his dog. So that was both separate occasions from when I had this incident occur.
Well, and the other thing about it too is like if I'm going down a trail, first off, I wish we would have put a map on here so you could see where Gus is at, because first off, it is unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah.
But it is way out there, right? But if I'm out there on that trail, probably not gonna. Did you take the wrapper off the candy bar? Were they in?
I left them slightly unwrapped, so I left them slightly ripped. But I mean, usually for a bear, like in the case of a bear, black bear, grizzly, what have you, they'll always leave garbage. Bears are notoriously, they'll go through garbage. They'll pull a garbage bag out to get at that, last piece of ham or whatever is in a garbage bag, and they'll rip it apart, kind of like a dog getting into your trash at home.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're notoriously messy. So I did that on purpose, and none of it was there. I mean, there was no.
Yeah, that's smart of you. That's smart of you to do that.
So again, to another, sign of like, oh, that is kind of peculiar. But again, too, I can't jump to any conclusions. It's just, for me, it's all evidence in one way or another.
Got it.
Right. Yeah. And a bear wouldn't leave you a rock.
Hey, yeah.
No, yeah.
Neither would a human. Most humans.
Well, I mean,
they wouldn't
unless
think
it's
that.
Winnie the Pooh, maybe.
Yeah, like
the way I kind of look at it is, if you left candy and you left McDonald's toys,
right?
If I'm hiking through the trail, I'm probably not touching it.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna walk by it.
Yeah.
And
this doesn't seem like a trail over by Oval Holster Park where there's like a bunch of teenagers like getting out of school and going over there.
Unless you got unless you got a ranger out there just cleaning up the area. I don't know. Do you have rangers out there? I guess they would, right? But he wouldn't leave you a rock.
He wouldn't be like, here's this amazing, beautiful rock.
Yeah, that rock to me is man, it's really interesting looking rock. It's odd.
Looks like there might be some kind of significance to it, and that's
what I think too. That's what it looks like to me. Like there is some type of significance,
which means,
to this rock.
And this is something Gus and I talked about the other night. Is like, which means there's consciousness there. There's like decision making going on where they say, okay, you know what I'm saying? So, which is fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up again. It's man, I've been hiking. I've been to Arkansas by the bluffs and everything, and I have never seen a rock with this type of design.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It
almost looks like snails.
Yeah, it kind of does. But it almost looks like, it reminds me of almost like, I know this. God, Garrett, keep it classy, will you?
Sorry, dude.
But like the markings is what it almost looks like. The cave drawings.
Yes.
Something like that. I know you said it was formed, but that's weird how that's formed like that with these designs on it. That's wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, Gus. That's a cool rock, man.
Hey, so Gus, out of all these experiences that you've had a lot of them.
I think you muted your mic, Gus.
Yeah, you're muted, Gus.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
Hey, so like all these experiences, you're doing the research, you're going down the rabbit hole. There has to be a time or two that have stuck out to you as maybe more terrifying than others. I mean, I think the natural thing, like I was listening to your show, and it seemed to be a common theme when these people, like the guy from St. Louis, right, where he was more afraid of dying of a heart attack than he was of the actual animal or being itself, right? So are there moments that really stand out to you that you were like, okay, that was so terrifying, maybe I shouldn't do this,
You know what? Yes, when I was younger, I definitely was the type of person that's like, as soon as I felt creeped out, I ran the other direction.
Right.
As I've gotten older, I've kind of pushed myself because that's where I think the answers lie, is on the other side of your comfort zone. To put it kind of weird and cliche, but for example, like when I heard the wood knock just the other night, when I heard that single wood knock, if I had heard it, and I know that, that's a way of communication between Sasquatch and one Sasquatch and another, I push myself to kind of like, you know what, I'm going to pull out my phone, start recording, because I may never get this moment again.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to show people that something actually happened, because we're definitely a fact-based society. It's very much the, Pixar, it didn't happen, or prove it to me, like it's, otherwise you're full of it.
Right.
So when I heard that wood knock, I said, you know what, that's it. I'm going to do a return wood knock and start recording. And I did. I had a feeling that day that something was going to happen, something my gut was telling me something weird or something interesting is going to happen today. And as I was walking down that same trail, I mean, this trail is 14 kilometers long, which is equivalent to, I want to say, about 10 miles, maybe. So it's a big trail and it goes deep into the mountains. So I walked about, I want to say 6 kilometers. And I had walked a heck of a lot longer than I had walked before. So I thought, the deeper I go and the deeper I went down this trail, the creepier I felt. And I had spent a good 3-4 hours on that trail the other day. And as I was walking along the trail, I found branches that were 8 feet high snapped in half, and they were fresh breaks. And the weird thing about them too was they weren't snapped cleanly. They were snapped and twisted too. So something had to have, it was almost like two hands had to have grabbed it, broke it, and then twisted it.
Right. Like you would with a stick.
Correct.
When you're trying to break it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was not like an old dead tree. These were healthy trees. And I looked at it and it was still white on the inside. And as I kept walking, I was like, that's pretty interesting. I kept walking, and right in the middle of the trail, dead center in the middle, I found a pile of feathers. No blood, no body, nothing. And we have prairie chickens where we are. We have prairie chickens where we are. So that was like the farthest point I got to. And then I kind of started to get this weird, eerie feeling. And I remember looking at my watch and realizing it's like, oh, geez, it's 6 o'clock.
Right.
So I had still a good hour and 10 minutes walk back to my car. So I thought, well, you know what? It's probably time for me to get going. You know, you never want to be alone in the woods at dark without any cell reception whatsoever. Right.
Right.
So yeah.
Gus, they're predominantly peaceful creatures, aren't they? From what you studied and researched. I mean, they do try to stay. They try to stay out of our way. It seems like.
I wouldn't say necessarily out of our way. I mean, there was actually a video that surfaced, I want to say last year, from northern Alberta. For those of you who don't know, northern Alberta is very famous for its oil patch. There's the province or state that I live in is very heavily influenced by oil. So up there were a couple of oil drillers. I guess they were building a road or something. And this guy pulled out his phone and he said he heard weird screams off in the woods. And it's a video. It's very blurry and pixelated. I think it's on YouTube somewhere, of a Sasquatch throwing a tree about 30 feet in the air at these people.
Damn.
And it's not a small tree. I want to say it's about 2 feet in diameter, and it probably weighs at least 400 or 500 pounds. And it's throwing this thing up like it's like an Olympian throwing a javelin.
Right.
Oh my God.
And these guys are like, there's a lot of profanity in it, so I'll warn all the listeners who are looking for it. It blew me away at the sheer strength, and I think too, it's also man moving in on its territory.
Absolutely,
it's kind of trying to assert its dominance. But for
posturing,
most of the encounters, I mean, the best way I could describe these creatures would be curious. They're always, you know, they if they see a person, they kind of stop dead in their tracks, and they're kind of looking at you, trying to figure out what you are, and you're looking at them, trying to figure out what they are. That would be the best way to describe it.
Where do you think these things came from? I mean, how long do you think they've been around, Gus?
I'm going to give you a rough estimate. The scientific name, I believe for these creatures would be Gigantopithecus afarensis, which is
easy for you to say.
It's a type of Homo sapien that was believed to have gone extinct between 1 to 2 million years ago, and now they're finding bones of them in caves in China currently. And these people are roughly 6 and 8 feet tall. And they've got femurs the size of our skulls. Like, that's how thick they are. These were not, by any means weak creatures. I mean, to stand the weather and the elements, you had to be strong. That saying, only the strongest survive. These guys did. And the theory is that these creatures kind of crossed the Bering Strait somewhere during the time of Pangea. So they were in Asia. That's why you get lots of people in Russia saying, oh, the Yeti, the Almasty, all that kind of stuff. They crossed that Bering Strait into North America. And when you look at a map of North America, Alaska almost touches Russia.
Right.
And south of Alaska, you've got the Canadian Yukon, British Columbia, and below that is Washington State, which is the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Highly
mountain range, very remote.
Lots of sightings.
Correct. And that's where these creatures believed to be residing. But the crazy thing to me is that pretty much I think every state in the U.S. has at least 1 or 2 reported sightings in the United States mainland, maybe with the exception of Hawaii, but Alaska had lots of them for sure. And that's what's astounding to me. Same thing here in Canada. We've had where I live in Alberta is just directly north of Montana, right on the doorstep of the Rockies. There's sightings quite often.
Right.
So that's where they believe they're residing, is they prefer a mountain range type of thing, heavily forested, where they can just kind of be on their own and live in peace.
Now, these bones you said they found, is this recent, or is this
I want to say within the last 10 years, Keith. Yeah.
Have they tried to, you know, I know through like DNA, they can actually recreate what something looked like. It'd be interesting if they did that.
I think there is somewhere some posters of you know, a side-by-side comparison of Gigantopithecus next to an everyday human. But you look at it and it's like a humanoid covered in hair, kind of, and it's, you know, ripped to shreds. It's you know, it's kind of like looking at a linebacker in his equipment.
Yeah,
but he's just fully muscular. It's like Tarzan if he was a monkey, I guess you could say.
Well, I think that's what Todd Standing was saying on your show, was that, like, you know, they'll find these bones, but it takes a few years for the information to come out, because they got to do the research, they got to write the papers, they got to test the stuff, analyze it, right?
Oh, exactly. It's a lengthy process. I mean, and that's the thing too, is like when you're dealing with people who are well educated, or, you know, in the education sort of spectrum, you know, like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, for example, right. Pretty well known in the Bigfoot community, professor at Idaho University.
Right.
He's one of those people that's kind of like, you know, he never wants to say, yes, it was a Bigfoot. You know, it's kind of like, okay, well, we got to run some tests, because as you know, I mean, facts are facts. They're facts for a reason, right? And you got to be 100%, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt about those facts before you bring them forward.
Right.
Nobody wants to have, you know, make an assumption or say something about something and then have to revoke it. It damages your integrity, right?
Right.
Yeah. We talked about this just a little bit, I think even maybe before the show, but I know you're not familiar with Art Bell, but he had a guy on who claimed in the 70s he had killed a female and male Bigfoot, had them buried, and he had a map to this place. Robert Freeman, or Morgan, I'm sorry, yep. he was in on this conversation, and, you know, he told Art Bell, he said, you know, Art, he goes, I'm sending you a map, and when I die, I want you to dig this thing up. And Art was scared to death because he didn't know, you know, maybe this guy had killed 2 human beings, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And the guy said when he shot both, he said he shot them. When he got to the bodies, he said he freaked out a little bit, because he said, oh my God, did I kill a mountain man? Did I kill? Right. He said because the genitals of the female were like female genitals of a human. The same thing with the male. But he said, but they didn't look human. They were covered in hair. Face was covered in hair. They had kind of that wide nose.
They're out at night.
Cold. Yeah. And he buried them one on top of the other. And a lot of scientists have been trying to get this map, because they want to dig up these bodies. I mean, it's a done deal. It's horrible that it happened, that he actually killed 2 Bigfoots.
Yeah.
But just think what that could do for science if they actually dug this up, and you know, indeed there's 2 Bigfoot bodies.
Well, go ahead, Gus. Because we talked about, you know, my question to you, and I think the question we come to a lot is, why aren't there bones?
Well, yeah, that's what some of the skeptics are going to say. Well, you know, if there's Bigfoots, then why are you finding bones and bodies? Right. And, you know, they got to die apparently at one point in time.
Of course, yeah. Well, the theory is that much like humans, they're a lot more on the human spectrum than they are ape. So what I've done through my research, and going back to that samurai chatter, we'll call it, which is the 2 Sasquatch kind of having a discussion with each other, or communicating with each other, is they have their own language. They have their own culture. A lot of scientists believe that they actually bury their dead. So one will pass away, and then they kind of have their own grave sites. And that's why we never find them. Unless, I mean, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they die and they just kind of sit and rot somewhere in such a remote place that it's impossible to get to. There's also that possibility. I mean,
that's true.
Really, there's chances of grizzly bears dying in places, and we never find those bones ever, right? It's just become one with the earth kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and not only that, the bones could get scattered around by other animals.
Well, not to mention you're in places that don't have the greatest environments at time.
Right. Well, it's just like you were talking about. There's so many, probably, you know, even here in Oklahoma, you were driving. Right. you're driving down and you looked in this forest area and you go, I bet no one's been in there in 100 years,
Dude, I was taking I was taking a piss tonight.
Okay.
No, I was in eastern Oklahoma today though.
Yeah.
Right, kind of out on some land.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like looking through and I was like, damn, is there a Bigfoot staring at me right now? But in my head I was thinking, dude, nobody's been out. And I know the people that live there.
Yeah.
They don't go back there. It's just completely covered.
Well, there's and that would be a perfect place for a Bigfoot.
You would need a machete to go out there, right?
Yeah, because those areas, where it's like, they're off to themselves,
right,
doing their things.
Well, and Gus, you had mentioned too, like, maybe because there's like random stacks of rocks, right? That you come across. You had mentioned something like that. Am I wrong?
Yes. There was an interview with another gentleman that was done on a podcast that I had listened to of him and his girlfriend. I think this was in Canada, or maybe it was the Pacific Northwest, maybe somewhere in Washington State, Oregon. Anyway, they had gone for a hike and were just going through, a nice stroll through the woods. And as they were chatting, they saw the stack of rocks, and one, I think it was the gentleman, picked up a rock, and off of this stack, it was 3 rocks, and threw it off into the woods. And then right at that moment, there was screaming and hollering, like ape-like screaming, and they were actually chased out of the woods by what they believe to be a Sasquatch disrupting the burial ground. So that was kind of their way of marking a grave. Now, again, too, I mean, that's just all theory. These people could be, totally, misleading people, but it's definitely food for thought for sure. Right. And it just goes to show that some of them they're intelligent creatures. I mean, if they've got, like some of these creatures have been told to use fire. Some of these creatures have been told that they have their own language. Some people have actually stated too that these animals have hunting groups where they actually are living in a tribe. So they're almost like a Native American tribe. And, the men go off and hunt, and then the women kind of stay back and nurse babies, and kind of like that hunter-gatherer mentality.
Which would go back to the point you were making when we were talking too, kind of about how, whenever the Europeans started coming over, and then, right? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So that was a Native American elder had done this discussion. His theory on what Sasquatch was it was something that the Native Americans had close ties to. I mean, almost every Native American tribe in the U.S. as well in Canada has a name for these creatures. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, I believe it's some tribe near the mainland of British Columbia calls them Sasquatch, which means hairy man of the mountain. In Manitoba, where I'm originally from, Canada, it's called Sabe, which means hairy man or big man.
Right.
Boss of the woods. There's all types of names for these creatures. And the theory was that they kind of associated with each other. They weren't necessarily, they had respect. It was like kind of like your neighbor. You have a neighbor next door. You don't necessarily have them over for dinner all the time, but
maybe not the same culture.
Say hi. Right. You kind of have that mutual respect. That's what this Native American elder said about these creatures. And when the white man started coming over and, these Native Americans started to assimilate themselves into more of a European culture, they kind of disassociated themselves and kind of retreated to the mountains. And that's where they live, or kind of retreated to the wilderness and kind of just, hey man, you do your thing, we do our thing.
Right.
Stay back, kind of in a respectful way, of course.
Well, it just because I always, and Keith, you and I talked about this at the end of the Deltov Pass incident episode, where it's just so interesting that these tribes and these cultures for so long have had something like a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or a Yeti written into their history, right? And during times when people weren't necessarily communicating, across the ocean, or right, and there wasn't mass communication, so they were all mentioning that for a reason. So whenever Gus told me that theory, that really stood out to me. That's why I wanted to make a note of it,
right?
Because that's a fascinating theory.
It is.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, for all of these, like I said, tribes to have a different name for something that resembles the creature that we know as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whether it's hairy man, mountain man, boss of the woods, big man, whatever the case may be, it really does. There's some sort of peculiarness to it, we'll call it. You know, the kind of sort of thing that makes you want to dig deeper and kind of be like, oh, that is interesting. You know, was it just, you know, because I don't think back in, you know, let's say 1,000, 2,000 years ago, when there wasn't a single white man in North America. You know, there were tribes in South Florida and there were tribes in northern Washington state. I don't think these cultures ever connected with one another. I mean, they're both far away.
Yeah.
Right. So how can they have a different name for these creatures, but still have have the same sort of description?
Right. No, right? Definitely.
That always kind of intrigued me.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. I was just going to mention my cousin Doug, who I don't know if you can read that. I just put a chat up there. He's from Canada as well. And he said, we had a ton of bears back home when I grew up in the woods, and I don't know anyone that found bear bones. And we know bears exist. So that's a good point.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people too, especially up here in Canada, go, you know, oh, with Bigfoot, quote unquote, you know, it's 1,000 pound, roughly, you know, 8 foot tall, 1,000 pound animal. What kind of food source would it have? It wouldn't be able to survive in these woods. Well, and then you make the argument, well, if a grizzly bear can make it work out here, chances are one of these creatures could too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right. That's a good point. I've never thought of it like that.
Right. No, absolutely.
It's a very good point.
Hey, you had and I'm just because Mona said she's afraid of the dark, which isn't surprising. But you were gonna tell a story about the guy in St. Louis. And what I found was interesting earlier, you were saying you looked at your watch, it was 6 o'clock, you knew the sun was going down. So you're like, I got to get the hell out of here, right? You don't want to be out there at night, because from listening to your podcast and kind of doing my own research, these things can essentially walk through the woods without flashlights, right?
Yes, they are. The theory is that they are nocturnal animals. A lot of the whoops, screams, wood knocks, all that kind of stuff, at least from the research that I've collected, I want to say about 75% of it occurs during the night. So you meet a lot of people too that are just like, oh, I rented a cabin out in, you know, northern BC. And I remember hearing this strange hollering out in the woods, and I had no idea what it was or who it was. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. A lot of people too, you know, which really kind of blows me away, is when they do see them at night or when they feel that they're around, their eyes always glow. So I've heard, you know, they glow yellow, they glow red, they glow green.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like looking at two very large fireflies, but they're glowing. And some people are like, oh, you know, it must be a wolf, it must be a this, it must be a that. Well, you know, you could make all those assumptions, because a lot of animals, as you know, especially the ones in North America, when you shine light on them, they'll reflect.
Or,
they will glow, you know. So there's always that possibility that, you know, they can walk through the dark, and that's where a lot of their activity is done. You know, I've listened, Todd Standing, for example, who I had on my show, has a video of him getting harassed by about 13, 14 Sasquatch. They're surrounding him, and he actually has to pull out a road flare and start screaming at them to get the hell out of there. And I think eventually they do, but it was one of the most terrifying moments of his life, he said. And, you know, there's a lot of videos too on YouTube. There's one that stuck out to me as well. I think it was from Alabama, I believe it was, or Georgia. And it was a guy just left his video camera sitting on his kitchen table at night. And you see this large, dark figure with glowing red eyes kind of peer in, look around, and then walk away.
Okay.
So, you know, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but it looks like from what it sounds like and from what it looks like, there are things that go bump in the night.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That's what this whole channel is
absolutely.
about.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, like I listened to a couple of your guests, and it was funny because, well, first off, let's go ahead and check the box on group hunting. You know, you just said Todd Standing was, you know, surrounded by 13 or 14 of these things. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, the guy from St. Louis, you know, he had one come into his campsite, but then whenever that one, and what was weird about this one, Keith, was outdoorsman, right? A lot of these guys are outdoorsmen.
Yep.
And so whenever you're camping and you hear something walking through the woods, you're thinking, okay, this guy thought, okay, it was a camper, a hiker that was lost. Okay, but then when he doesn't see the flashlight, he's like, okay.
Yeah, walking in the pitch dark.
Yeah. So that would completely just freak me the hell out, dude.
Yeah.
But even in that case, there was multiple Sasquatches, right?
Yeah.
Communicating to each other, surrounding the camp.
Okay, so I got one of my questions is, okay, if and someone else wanted to know this too. Do they have a den? I mean, do they sleep? Do they just constantly walk? What do they do?
Well, from what I've gathered too, is some people say that they live in something called a domicile. So they'll find an area that's uninhabited or untouched by humans, totally remote. And we'll call it like a Bigfoot triangle. So it's, three mountains, one in each corner. And there's a day watcher. This is Todd Stanning's theory, and it sounds pretty accurate. So some of them, the family group will sleep during the day inside the valley, and then one creature will go up on one mountain, one creature will go up on another and another, and kind of watch on the inside of the valley and kind of keep them aware of danger, just for hunters or for grizzlies or for any other type of animal that may be coming through. And if there is something that, that could be a potential danger, they have a way of driving them out, whether that's, aggression, bluff charging, screaming, throwing rocks, all kinds of stuff.
Wow. So you're saying, like, when you say three mountains, so I see what you're saying. So they're in between the three mountains, like surrounding them, and then having another Sasquatch that's kind of looking out to make sure to keep them safe.
Correct. There's three Sasquatch on the lookout. So one on each mountain, and then the family
gotcha. Okay.
Between these three mountains, if that makes sense.
No, it does, yeah.
Angle, and they kind of are what Todd Stanning calls day watchers. So they'll kind of stay awake during the day, then they sleep at night, and then you'll see other creatures in and around, and that's what most people report seeing. Is most of the time is it's very few and far between that they'll see a group of Sasquatch during the day together. Usually they're sleeping or that kind of thing. That's the theory, at least. But yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I saw. Is this possible? I saw a show where these guys were hunting for Bigfoot, and they came across almost like all these broken sticks, brush. It almost looked like a makeshift hut. Almost, but it was like very camouflaged. You couldn't see it, and they believe that's where some of these Bigfoot would sleep. So it's possible, I guess. I mean, what if you can't find three mountains?
Well, my thing is this: if they have some resemblance of a culture, if they have language, if they have tradition, if they have right communication, then I wouldn't put it past them to be able to do things like that, right?
Right.
To build something and to make decisions. Like that's crafty. That's a different level of intelligence, the lookouts, and that goes all towards group dynamic. And so we're moving away from the individualistic idea of Bigfoot that I think a lot of people have, right?
Right. Yeah, Gus, one of the big questions that everybody's wanting me to ask you is, do you think there's any connection between aliens and Bigfoots, like UFOs? I mean, there's been sightings of, I remember watching this show where this girl saw like what looked like a UFO, and she lived out in the country. It disappeared, and then a Bigfoot came walking out of the woods. Do you think there's any connection there?
I don't. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel that some people do believe that's the case, but I think it's I think a little more on the biological side of it. I think these are actual creatures that just have not been discovered yet. They're made of flesh and blood. There's no extraterrestrial. There's no spiritual connection between them.
So not interdimensional creatures, as some people suggest.
Correct.
As Garrett suggests.
That's my opinion. Who knows, though? I mean, everyone's entitled to their own belief, and that is pretty odd, pretty peculiar behavior. But I have heard, things about, aliens or extraterrestrials are disguised as Bigfoot, and I just kind of view that as kind of like, oh well, you say what you want, pal.
yeah, for sure. Hey, so I mean, along that point though, let's go back to the biological side because they're hairy. And I heard in one of your discussions, somebody was saying it almost felt like they were like, there was some sort of telekinesis going on, right? And I think one of your guests had said, they're covered in hair. That could be a way for them to sense people, right? More precisely. And so, do you remember that conversation? What I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I think it was from the Florida episode. If I'm not
It
mistaken.
was, yeah. And it was like the guy had felt like there was some sort of like mind control going on from this being. Do you think that that's just because you had also mentioned that you could feel something staring at you at one point, and that was enough to kind of to freak you out. So do you think there's something to that?
I think that I would just label that as intuition.
Okay.
Just as like the best way I could describe that would be, if you get in your car and you feel like there's somebody behind you,
right,
in your car, like literally sitting in the back seat, 90% of the time there probably is. But if there's someone across a parking lot staring at you, it's going to be a little harder for you to tell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
You definitely feel a presence there. You feel that energy. That's where I would kind of categorize that, especially if you're seeing one of these creatures and you're 20, 30, 40 feet away from it. There's nothing else around you other than woods, and you see something clearly. You're across a pond, a lake, or whatever, and it's 300, 400 feet away. You're definitely going to have some kind of feeling there in your gut. Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
To kind of categorize that, like, yes and no. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a mind control. I think there's kind of almost like a brain freeze in a way. Not necessarily a brain freeze from when you're drinking a cold glass of water, but it's kind of like you're trying to go through all the things in your mind, trying to process what's happening in that moment.
And trying to eliminate everything.
Exactly.
Especially Bigfoot.
Exactly. Am I looking at a gorilla right now? Well, how is that possible? I'm in South Georgia.
There's right. Definitely.
Right. That would be the best way to categorize it.
Awesome.
So Gus, there's a picture you sent Garrett. I'm going to put it on the screen here. It looks like a very large footprint.
Correct.
Can you tell us a story about this?
Yes. So this was back in, I believe, May of this year. My girlfriend and I had gone for a picnic in Kananaskis, which is that large mountain range, pretty large national park here in Alberta. And we had just walked off the road, and there was this really nice creek. I almost want to say river, but not necessarily that large. Anyway, we had kind of pulled out a blanket and just, sat down, had some lunch. And it was around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And we were just like, oh, well, it's Sunday. We should probably start heading back home and start getting ready for the week. And I was like, that's a good idea. And as we started walking back, just along this bank of this creek, I saw this large, what looks like a footprint. And you can see what looks like a heel all the way up. And then there's a large toe there, and it looks like about another 3 toes on the side there. My hand, I've measured my hand. It's about from the top of my middle finger all the way to my wrist is about 11 inches. And you can see that there's another good maybe 11 inches on top of my hand. I didn't have a tape measure with me, unfortunately. All I had was my phone. So I kind of used my hand as a point of reference, but this thing was massive.
It looks like it's probably about 24, 25 inches long.
Yeah. And you're looking at around at least
a foot wide, maybe.
Yeah. 8 inches wide for sure. And what really blew me away too was the depth of how deep it was in the ground.
You're right.
Inch. So something very large and very heavy had to have made that. If it is a footprint, it could be something entirely different. But I was astounded to see that. That was my first ever sign of a Sasquatch footprint. Hopefully, we'll call it that. But it would be something entirely different.
Now, did you cast that?
I did not. I was going to go back that same day, but it started to rain and snow in that same area.
Oh, okay.
And it's a mountain range too, so I just didn't want to risk it trying to find it, and also driving on an icy road. It just was not worth it. So
yeah, absolutely.
I kind of just bit my lip and kind of just was like, all right, well, I've got the picture, so
yeah,
there's definitely something there.
When I'm looking at the toes, is it just the picture? It looks like there's huge indentions too with the toes.
Yeah.
Where it, like sunk. I mean, there's a huge indentation with the foot. So even if someone was going to fake this, they would have to get several 100 pounds to make this print.
Well, here's the other thing is you would have to really think about it. This thing would be walking off its toe, right?
And not only
off
that,
its toes.
Right. And let's just say someone tried to fake it. What's the chances of you going out somewhere like this and, going, because I would want to hide somewhere and see people find it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I just, I don't think it's faked. I love the footprints. I don't, because it's just like, what would be the point? Because there's more of a point that no one's going to see a track that you put out anyway.
Yeah, and that would take some time.
That would take a lot of time. It would take a lot of weight. It's got definition of a foot. The toes are all there. It almost has the angle from the big toe to the small toe, just like a regular foot. Just
that
very
big toe.
big.
That big toe, they're really putting a lot of pressure on it, right?
Yeah. So he's walking forward, and he's he's going down on his tippy toes.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's an amazing picture, Gus.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it looked like it was something that if the creature was walking, it definitely looked like it started with its heel first, then went all the way down with its toe.
Right.
And one thing that also kind of stood out to me was how pristine it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and I don't remember what the weather was like in that part of the area the night before. But what really weirded me out was, and my girlfriend was there, we looked for other footprints for about 15 to 20 minutes.
Sure.
That was the only print there. And it was just along this creek bed, just the one. So I don't know. A lot of people who have had encounters have said that they'll see something. Like there was a gentleman I interviewed briefly from northern Manitoba, where I'm originally from. And he was putting up power lines, and he said he saw this creature standing out from the edge of a wood line, and it was, 8 feet tall or whatever. And he said when it looked at him, he looked at it for about 20 seconds, and it walked back off into the woods, and it didn't make a sound. And this is an 8 foot tall, 1,000-pound creature. So I think when they don't want to be discovered, they won't be. They're kind of those masters. So there was patches of grass there too. I didn't see any indentations in the grass, but luckily for me, this was just one patch of mud, and it was just along a creek bed, going up at an angle. So it would have been very hard for me to cast, but it was just something I saw. I had to take a picture of it because I knew I may not see it again. So there it is.
Hey, I was just going to make go ahead, Keith.
No, just saying on the right side too, is it looks deeper. Right?
Yeah, okay. A little bit. Yeah.
I think I solved this for you, Gus. I think this is Garrett's footprint.
Yeah, that's me, dude. I was up chilling at your picnic. No, hey, I was gonna tell you. So we talked, I believe it was last week. It's been a few days. And we talked about this picture, and I asked you about the one footprint. And it's kind of funny because I'm kind of like free range with my kids. So one thing we do with like the two younger ones is I just let the water go in the backyard, and they kind of just play in the mud. And so I started thinking about it, and I'm constantly barefoot. And that's why Keith's making this joke. And so every day, almost every day, I'm accidentally stepping in what is this mud, right? And so, but what I notice is whenever I go back like the next day and the sun has been on it and the dogs have ran over it, really, there's only like, you can only make out like one or two of my footprints. And that's me like kind of trampling around, right? And so I did this little test. I should have taken a picture of it where the kids were playing out. I left a footprint and then stepped out because immediately every time I step in the mud, I want to get out as soon as possible. I don't want all my feet to be dirty. And I went back the next day, and you could make out a partial print of my foot, but not all of it. And that's just from
just a little bit of it.
That's just me taking the kids in immediately, letting the ground soften, letting the dogs out, letting the wind blow. So that's how because I was kind of stumped by this picture too. I was like, why is there only one? And the other thing I thought about, you just brought it up. These things are elusive. So you can imagine, like, are there a lot of bears out where you're at?
Yeah, there are. And
do you see them often?
Sorry?
Do you see them often?
I've seen a few. Since I've only next week it'll be 2 years that I've lived in Alberta. And since I've lived here, I've only seen, I want to say 2 or 3 black bears, and I've seen about 3 or 4 grizzlies. But there was another trail last summer I remember walking along, and it was kind of like a we'll call it white mud trail. And I remember seeing full-grown bear footprints, and right beside it were bear cub footprints, and that they were a couple of days old. But I noticed that there was a big difference there. There was a clear claw in all of them,
right?
And they kind of had a U shape to them, whereas this kind of has almost like a indentation of the top of a forefoot and then an arch, but not necessarily an arch, like more of a flat foot, and then
right.
3 or
This is
4
like a
toes.
prototypical Sasquatch foot.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And I actually I poked my fingers in each one of those what looks like toe marks.
Mm-hmm.
And it went a little farther too. I just didn't want to disrupt any of the evidence there. But I poked in, and it was, like it was about the length of my pinky up top there. And for each one, I mean, as I went down each one, it was progressively smaller.
Right.
So like less of my pinky fit in. Whereas like with a bear footprint or a bear track, it's more like the claws are almost the same size in a way, but they're farther up the foot, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well,
this definitely has like a staircase sort of theme from the small toe all the way up to the big toe, much like humans would be.
Well, and like the point I was going to make is like if you're in an area where there's obviously a shit ton of wildlife and bears, but how often do you really see them? Yeah, every now and then. Now take that bear and give it the intelligence of what we think a Sasquatch has.
Yeah,
it would be much more elusive, right? Like if it didn't want to get seen, if it didn't want to be found, it wouldn't be found. And to think that if it's gifting and communicating and has traditions, to think that it doesn't want to be followed or have its tracks taken, right? It's not really too far-fetched, honestly.
No, yeah, exactly.
I love that picture.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Do you remember where that was at?
Did that scare the heck out of your girlfriend when she saw that print?
Seriously.
She was, you know what? She was a bit of a trooper about it, so I was pretty proud of her. But she was like, "Oh, that's pretty interesting. That's kind of weird." But she kind of shook it off and said, "It is what it is." And again, too, with me is like, back when I was a kid, I was like, "Oh, I found a Bigfoot footprint." Now I'm kind of just like, well, you got to weigh all the pros and cons and what's true and what's not. So when we did see it, I was definitely shocked, and I was very excited, to say the least. And she was just like, what do you think that was? And I was just like, I honestly, babe, I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea.
Does she share in your beliefs?
She definitely is one of the types of people that she's open-minded to it, for sure. I think she's more on the side of, we need a body kind of thing, or we need a sample or what have you. There's a lot of evidence that kind of is swept under the rug that not a lot of people know about.
And why is that?
And what is it?
Yeah, and what is it?
And what is it?
I remember watching, I think it was Monster Quest, I believe it was, which was a show that was back on the History Channel back in, like, I want to say 06 to about 08, 09 maybe. And this woman was on her way to her boyfriend's house. This again too is in Minnesota, actually. Had hit something that fit the description of a Sasquatch. These guys went out and shot at it, and I think it was a clump of fur came off.
Okay.
Bugs.
Yeah, sounds like bugs.
Yeah.
So what'd they do with it?
They sent it to a lab, and they kind of ran some tests on it, and they said that there were 6 or 7 chromosomes in it that matched to humans. There were another 4 or 5 chromosomes that matched an ape, and the rest were unidentifiable.
Wow, that's pretty compelling.
That is compelling.
Yeah. So, and again, too, I mean, I don't know if it was that exact show, if it was something else, but that was kind of like, oh my God, like, wow. That's because it's impossible. It's impossible to fake DNA when you really think about it at the end.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You can't create unless you've got, a giant lab somewhere and you're creating these in a a test tube, maybe, but
right.
Who has the time?
It's science.
Exactly. Exactly. Science is fact.
And we talk about DNA a lot on this show.
Yep. Yes,
Definitely.
And how powerful it is.
Yeah. Gus, I want to show you a picture. Last week, Garrett kind of shared with you, we did a show on Dilatov Pass where there was possibly these people had these crushing injuries, like if they had been in a car wreck. And they took a lot of pictures. The people gathered their camera, film developed, and I'm going to just show you this picture that was on one of the films. Now, can you see that yet? Or
definitely,
yeah. You make of that?
So what do you make of this? Because it looks like a freaking Sasquatch to me.
Well, you know what? It's definitely a figure.
It's so grainy.
Yeah, well, exactly, and that's part of the issue. When was this picture taken exactly?
1959.
Okay, so
in Russia.
Like, one thing I love about those shows like Finding Bigfoot is they always go back to the site where the photo was taken, and they kind of do a side by side with a regular human being. Right. So in order to do a size comparison, it's very difficult. So that's number one.
Absolutely. They talked about that with this particular photo because they said, we don't know what the size of the tree was at this point, and it's hard to tell. I mean, and it could just be a hiker in a heavy snow jacket, but to me, it's an odd picture for sure. Just,
you know what? It looks a lot too like some of the statues or wood cutouts.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
It looks like it's mid-stride, which kind of is odd, and it looks like it's definitely looking directly
focused
at the photographer.
Yeah.
I mean, because I try to keep,
absolutely, I'm not trying to put you on the spot and say yes, this is definitely Bigfoot. It's just it was an interesting photo, and there's many possibilities. Like it could have been one of the hikers, perhaps.
Well, I think matched though with the injuries is where it starts.
Yeah, that's where the injuries is the only thing I couldn't explain on this. Like chest being crushed in. They said these people were hit with such force that was like a car wreck, being hit by a car. And you hear about the strength of a Bigfoot, but then also you hear that Bigfoots are peaceful. They usually are not going to attack a whole bunch of hikers.
Well, also though, they were warned before walking into this by the local.
That's interesting. Yes, there was a tribe called the Mincy tribe, and they were telling these people that be careful for the snowman. That's what they called him. And they said be very careful about the snowmen that are in the forest. And that was a warning to those folks. And so then this picture popped up, and it just, like I said, we obviously we can't say yes or no, but it's interesting, anyway.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'm looking at that arm too on the right side, and it does look fairly long too. And I know that Sasquatch is predominantly well known for having long arms. So it doesn't look like it's abnormally long, which is another interesting fact. And the other left arm kind of looks like a squiggle too, so it almost
that's what I was looking at too.
It looks a little odd. It looks like it's almost like double jointed or something on the side.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like it's hanging onto that tree while it's poking out and looking directly at the photographer.
That's what I think.
The legs do look thick though too. Definitely, it definitely looks like somebody burly, that's for sure.
No neck.
Yeah. Like Garrett.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another picture I want to show you. I found
this is Keith's favorite picture.
It is because
he's friendly.
I mean, is this real, you think, or is this fake?
I don't know. I mean, this is Todd Standing's photo again too. I was lucky enough to have Todd on my show last summer, I believe it was, and he has a lot of compelling evidence. He has a lot of compelling stories. With this one, I mean, it's just so hard to tell. The fur looks so, especially the hair, it looks so genuine too.
Yeah. And even the markings on the face look real. The the nose looks real. Man,
I don't know if you guys saw the video clip to this, but there's actually a video clip of it. And while he's in focus, there's a fly that flies into the creature's eyes, and it blinks.
Oh, wow.
at one point, and I don't know. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. It was in the documentary though, and I was really blown away by that. So
yeah,
I get you definitely tell it's organic. That's for sure. I mean, if a fly is going to fly into it, like if it's something synthetic, flies aren't necessarily going to fly at it. But if it is organic, you know,
right. Well, and it'd be really hard to blink if you're in costume there. That'd be super hard to blink.
that would be, yeah. And to go into the detail, I mean, I guess someone would do that to fake a picture, but there's a lot of detail in this. If this is a mask, you know, that they went into great detail to make this thing look real.
Right.
Yeah, like especially like you said, the hair on it. There's abnormal, kind of weird markings on the face. The face looks almost like it's leather. It's real tough, almost gorilla-like.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, the description too, like from when I hear from eyewitnesses this, they always say it was almost like a grayish leather skin. And it was like, you know, everywhere else had hair except for most of the parts of the face.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely, like when you look at it at first glance, it definitely looks Neanderthal-like.
Yes,
it really does.
It sure does.
You know, but to say something, and again, too, I mean, a lot of people in the Bigfoot community love or hate Todd Standing, so it's hard to take a stance on that. Again, too, he does a Bigfoot expedition every summer for multiple people, where you can actually go out to a certain area where these creatures are residing, and you actually have a chance to come face to face with them. I've never been. I don't know anybody that has done it, but it's definitely something to look into for sure. And who knows, maybe we'll see this guy, or maybe it's a dude in a mask. We don't know.
So you said Todd Standing, is his reputation good, or is it kind of a 50-50 thing?
It is a 50-50. There's some people that say he's real, and then there's some people that say that he's a hoaxer. And one of the reasons I actually brought him on my show is because I was one of those people that's like, well, I neither believe that he's telling the truth, nor did I deny. I'm kind of neutral on the issue.
Right,
so
right.
Like, I want to hear the facts. I want to hear it directly from the horse's mouth. And for him to come on my show and we talked for a good hour.
Yeah, it was awesome.
A lot of the stuff that he was discussing with me seemed pretty believable. But again, you know, it's hit and miss, right? There's a lot of people that have said, you know, I've heard some people say some things as ridiculous as his family or his wife or something like that owns a makeup or costume company. And
wow.
And Vancouver is Hollywood North. It's like, you know, that's where like all the people who want to make movies in Canada go to. That's like Canada's Los Angeles. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm
Has someone actually checked that out? I mean,
I think some people have. I don't know if it's true or not. I've read about it in forums.
Because then I'd have to, if that's the case, I would have to question it at that point. If there's professional, you know,
of course, yeah, that's what I think everyone should do and that's why I use an anonymous platform, because I don't like to take sides personally. I want people to share their information, tell their stories, and tell it how it is.
Right.
You know, for what it is. I actually had almost on hand and knee had to beg this one gentleman from I believe he was Georgia, South Georgia, somewhere just outside Atlanta. He's a chiropractor, and he has a practice that's just on the edge of this small town. And right at the edge of his practice, there's a road, and then there's a large forest. And he's got these 8-foot tall windows that start, you know, maybe 3-4 inches off the ground and go all the way up to the ceiling. And his receptionist had called in sick that day, or was coming in late. So he went in at around 6 or 7 in the morning to open up the office. And he said when he turned the lights on and he looked up from the receptionist desk out at this wood line, he said peering in at his window, bent down, was what he believed was a male Sasquatch. And it was bent down looking at him in this window that was about 8 feet high off the ground.
Wow.
And I almost had to beg him to come on my show and just tell his story. And he said people would recognize my voice, and, you know, he would damage his reputation one way or another. But he just said, you know, that's my story, and I hope you can appreciate it. And I was like, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the most famous film in Bigfoot history, the 1967 Patterson film.
Let's do it.
Is this real or fake? I read an article. Who was the partner of Patterson? The guy that
I can't
worked
remember
with
his name.
Robert Gimlin.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'd read somewhere that he went on to say that was all fake, that he had the costume in the back of the car, and all that stuff. Have you heard that as well?
I have heard that through the grapevine, but then I've also heard other interviews where he said that he took Roger Patterson will take it to his grave. That was, and he took it to his grave because he passed away, I think, about 11 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that was a real footage. They saw a real creature. And then you've got this Bob Gimlin saying, well, maybe not. So again, too, it was the 60s. A lot of people have analyzed it. Some people have said that the creature in the suit, or person, we'll call it, was at least 7 feet tall. I think 6.5, 7 feet tall.
Okay.
And again, too, when they broke down that film, because there was a documentary a while back too. I was about 13, I think, when I watched it. And they kind of did, like, the scientists analyzed it, and they were videographers and all that kind of stuff. They had, a full 360 view of the film itself, and they kind of recreated it. And what they came to the conclusion was that it would be pretty hard for somebody to fake it.
And did they say something about the muscles? You could actually see the muscles in the legs.
Yes, and they said something about the fur. I believe it was, now don't quote me on this, someone had said that the fur, if it doesn't reflect light, it's fake. But if it does reflect light, it's real. And you can see the light shining up on the fur of the creature as it's walking. Another part that blew me away was the fact that they believe it was a female because it had large breasts on it. So just out of curiosity, I mean, who's going to, there might be some perverts back in the 60s putting boobs on a monkey suit, but who knows? And one thing that really stood out to one of the researchers too, and said that the breasts actually bounce with the step.
Interesting.
So pretty hard. I mean, when you're dealing with fake breasts, I mean, if you've seen them at a costume store, they're like foam pieces. They don't move.
Right.
Those ones kind of had a little bit of a jiggle to them.
And especially back then, that would have been hard to recreate.
Right.
Definitely. I mean, you'd have to spend a lot of money back then. I mean, now if you wanted to recreate something like that, we've all got, 4K video cameras on our phones, for crying out loud.
Yes.
We know right away if it was a person in a suit. And, for them to spend all that time and money in it and be in an area where it's predominantly well known for Bigfoot, it definitely begs the question. It's like, okay, sure, maybe it wasn't, but what if it was?
Right.
So
it's the yin and the yang kind of thing.
And let me ask you, regarding that film, and I've heard this, and I never can see it. They say that there's actually a baby Bigfoot in the background of this thing. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't. I have seen other videos of that, actually, of a female Sasquatch being approached by a hiker, and it's carrying one in its arms, and it's kind of running away.
Yeah. Well, this is a Patterson film. They said if you look real close in the background, there is the female, obviously the Bigfoot that we're watching walk across. They said that there's, and I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, and I was hoping you could say, yes, I know exactly what part of the film that is, because I've never seen it, and I always look for that. But there's a couple of people that said, yeah, you can see a baby Bigfoot in the background.
No, because I've watched the film a few times. I haven't seen anything in particular, because a lot of people too have stabilized the actual shot of the clip, and I've looked at it frame by frame, but it's been a while since I've looked at it. But I don't see anything in the background as far as I know.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That might be someone just saying something else. But it's also such a grainy film. I mean, it was made in 1967.
Yeah, 16 millimeter, I think.
Yes, I believe that's what it was too. Because I'm looking at it right now too, and I don't see anything in the background. Maybe actually, it looks like.
Did you find it?
Yeah, there looks like something peeking out behind a tree, but I mean, it's so hard.
That's creepy.
Okay, what's the timestamp on that?
Let me
so I can look.
Looks at well, I'm watching just a 4K analysis of it, and it's just focusing on the creature. But in the top right-hand corner, it looks like movement. It looks at about 17 seconds.
I'm so checking that out when we get off.
Yeah, definitely.
Too hard to tell, honestly,
Wow.
draw any type of conclusion. I mean, to say there's one Bigfoot there. That's the probably the world famous film of Sasquatch, but
right.
To say like there's another animal or another creature in the background too is a little wacko to me, but
right. Yeah.
But
could be really reaching there.
Yeah.
Finding that. So have you heard like I've watched Finding Bigfoot. I'm sure you've watched all those too.
Mm-hmm.
And it always seems like, they'll send hair samples off or they'll send scat samples off, but we never hear the results of these.
Sucks.
And have they actually through DNA or science? I know we did talk about that earlier. You said that there was some human DNA with an ape, and then something that was unknown. But as far as the scat, were you familiar with that one? That this guy sent some scat in. He thought it was Bigfoot scat, and I never heard the results back on that, nor the fur, because I heard they send fur in as well.
Right.
I haven't actually. That's always something that kind of has kind of deterred me from finding Bigfoot, is they never kind of present the evidence at the end of it. It's almost kind of like they just leave you on a cliffhanger, and it's they're doing what they can for ratings in a way, right?
Yeah, hoping that'll show up in the next 4 or 5 episodes, and it doesn't usually.
Yeah,
which probably
years later,
which probably answers its own question. If they're not, it definitely, if it was a sample of Bigfoot, DNA match, would be like, oh my god, big discovery, right? So probably not the case at all. So, what do you think? What's the future look like for Bigfoot in research? Where
are we headed?
That's it's a great question, but that's also such a deep question. I want to say, just with how advanced technology is and how creative in a way human beings are getting, when it comes to drones now, for example.
Oh, I thought of that. That's
there's a lot of people doing a lot of drone footage, and which is really weird to me, because there's a sign that was put up, I want to say within the last year or two, in Kananaskis, where I usually go squatching, that there's a sign that says no drones are allowed in national parks, which has always been really odd to me. So I don't know if it's why that rule exists or what have you, but I mean, if the rule doesn't exist in some parks in the US, or maybe it's just that specific park up here in Canada, I think it's only a matter of time before we catch one, or we see one on video, or we get some kind of evidence. And I hate to be, the tree hugger in a way, but I hope, if we do discover it, we do it in a peaceful way.
That was one of my next questions was, Gus, you're out in the forest, you have a 30-06 on you.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful rifle. You see this creature, you want to prove it to all the world that these things do exist. Do you take the shot?
Okay. I'm going to say no. And for 2 reasons. Number one is, to look at something, you don't even know what it is, and to shoot it, would you be able to do it? Looking at something that looks so human-like, it's like shooting a human being.
And it also could be someone in a suit and you just murdered.
Correct.
Right.
And then number 2 would be Todd Standing. This was an off-the-record conversation I had with him. Said that Sasquatch have I call it the Godfather mentality, where they kind of live in a tribe together, and it's almost like if you harm one of them, you've got 20 others coming after you. They will find you and they will kill you.
Right.
And it'll be as if you never even existed.
That's exactly what Bug said in that interview, that he was afraid when he shot those 2 Bigfoots, he never set foot back in that area because he was afraid that they would find him and kill him.
Right.
Yeah. And that's one of the theories that I have too. I mean, it's always okay, I think, to take a picture or to take a video, or in my case, have vocalization responses, or in some cases get a wood knock back. There's that option too. But to actually kill something that we don't even know what it is, there's just, I don't know. It feels like
it's the only way you're going to get evidence, though. I mean,
yeah.
Because Gus, you could take 100 pictures of what you're saying is a Bigfoot, and it could be a Bigfoot, and they're never going to believe you. I mean, and I wouldn't. I'm like you. I couldn't take that shot. Number one, because it could be a guy in a suit. I could be killing somebody. Mm-hmm. Number two is just harming an animal. But I mean, God, is there a cage they could build, a trap, a live trap or something that they could capture one of these things, and so we could finally put a rest to this Bigfoot thing?
Yeah, but that would be a slippery slope, because once you got one, then everyone's going to be going for them. What I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they already are, but
that's the thing. There's, it would be like, they're putting a trophy on it, $10 million to whoever shoots one of these things, or brings me a scalp, or brings me a head, or brings me a blood sample, or whatever. That's one thing. You could shoot a dart at it, it could suck their blood out and then fall out,
right,
as it's running off into the woods, and then you go and you find that dart later on. That's one thing. But to actually take its life is, I don't know. I mean, it's something that I have thought about it, absolutely. But I mean, who knows what you're shooting?
Right. I know, exactly. And
what if it was like the last one?
There's some rednecks out here in Oklahoma that take that shot.
Gus just killed the last Bigfoot on Earth. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, though, that's the only way we're going to be able to prove this thing, is either we get a body, capture one, kill one, which no one wants to do.
There's some people that want to. Like,
yeah. Believe you me, yeah.
But not in this chat room.
No. There's rednecks around. They'll take that shot. Well, I mean, if Bugs took that shot and killed,
I had no idea. Hey, and Gus, they didn't just take one shot. They took like 40.
Yeah, they all had high-powered rifles, and they just unloaded on this creature.
And here's the crazy thing, Gus, is it fell to the ground and then got up and jumped over a fence.
And then they shot it some more.
Yep.
It's astounding to me. There's, I don't know if you guys have heard the Justin Smeja story from, I want to say Northern California, something like that. He had claimed to have shot a baby Bigfoot, and he shot the creature. He shot what he believed was the parent, and then kind of took off into the woods. And then as they were looking for the adult that they had just shot, kind of trying to find a blood trail or what have you, these two creatures kind of came out of the woods, and they were about I want to say about 3-4 feet tall. And they said like they were talking to each other, but it sounded kind of like two deaf people talking to each other. And he just said, we're never, like, he was with his buddy too at the time. And he said, he's like, don't shoot this, don't shoot this, don't shoot it. And he shot it. And he's like, whatever, I'm going to take one of the babies. He shot the baby, and it rolled down this hill, and it fell right onto his foot. And he shot it in the throat. So it was it was on its last legs. It was coughing up blood, but he said he remembers holding it up and looking at it. And he just said, I don't know what the hell this is. And terrified, he just said, all right, like, let's just bury it, and then we'll come back another day. Because if we run into a ranger and they see that we had
for
killed
sure,
this thing, it's what kind of repercussions are they going to have?
Yeah.
So they did that. And then I think they came back a week later, and they found that the baby was gone. The body was gone, and replaced it. There was some hair there. So they took the hair, and it ended up being black bear fur.
Wow. Okay.
So all through this, I mean, and they had this guy hooked up to a lie detector test. He had like people from the FBI questioning him, during a documentary, did you shoot this thing? Did this happen? And he was hooked up to a lie detector, and they all determined that he was telling the truth. But the weird part is finding that black bear fur. And someone had mentioned in a Bigfoot forum that they believe that these creatures were so intelligent, they probably found a dead bear, ripped off some fur, took the baby back, and replaced it there. So they had something to work off of, kind of lead them down a false trail.
Got it.
That's how intelligent these creatures are. That's a theory, though, again. But that is something that definitely blows me away.
Well, I mean, you think about it. If you gave a black bear like portions of our brain, it would be a completely different animal.
Yeah.
It would hunt differently. It would sleep differently. It would die differently, right? And so, yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always something to think about. And some people are just like, well, they're whatever they are, they're just big, stupid animals. And it's like, I don't know about that. I mean,
who's the stupid one?
I don't think they're stupid. Yeah, I mean, these things have eluded people for thousands of years. Yeah. They're not stupid.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's definitely something to it, for sure.
Have you heard the story about the guy who said he killed a Bigfoot and it's in his freezer, and he would show pictures of like a hand and things like that?
What was, is that the Minnesota Iceman? He froze it, right?
Yes.
Back in the 60s, 70s, or maybe.
Oh, no. This is more, this is more current. This was like.
Oh, no. I have heard of the Minnesota Iceman, though. Because my relatives live in Minnesota. And so I heard stories about the Minnesota Iceman as a kid.
Wow. So share that real quick if you have time.
Yeah. So I can't remember who this was, but it was some guy, some sort of farmer or rancher or whatever, claimed to have shot what they call the Minnesota Iceman, quote unquote, who was believed to be a Bigfoot. He shot it, he killed it, and then he kept it in a freezer, and casually he would ask circus owners to pay him, $500 or whatever, and he would take the freezer out to them and then kind of just let people go in and view it as they pleased. And I was like, oh, okay.
Is there pictures of this?
I don't know. I think I saw some pictures back in the day. This was in a small chapter book I had read as a kid, and then I had done some research on it online, but nothing really past that. So I guess it was just a bunch of hokum, but that's what I thought you were kind of going with.
Yeah, no, this was just like, and I don't know if I'm sure they proved it fake, but he's holding up like parts that he sawed off this Bigfoot. Oh my God. Like, here's the hand, here's a foot, that kind of thing. And I really didn't further investigate it to see what became of it.
We would have heard that.
But yeah, I mean, that would be huge news. They actually found a body.
Well, exactly. And some of these people, like, there's some people out there that there's no doubt in my mind they'll go to ridiculous lengths to prove themselves. It's like, oh, I've got, the evidence, I've got, the body itself. I don't know about that. I'm always on the fence about, really is this person, a little nuts, or is this person actually telling the truth? But that's how it always starts. There's always that people thought Robert Patterson was a nut, and now he's got probably one of the best, if not the best, pieces of evidence in Sasquatch history. Again, too, I mean, it always starts with hunt. That's why I have this anonymous platform on my podcast. Is there's people who are terrified to besmirch their reputation by coming forward and sharing their testimony or their story or their encounter. And I want to kind of provide a platform where they can do that freely and not have to worry about being mocked or ridiculed. It's just, here's my story. You send it out into the world. And if people are going to appreciate it, great. If not, that's okay too.
Absolutely.
Let it be.
So this would be a good point for you to go ahead and share with the audience what about your podcast, about your forum, and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Gus G. I run a podcast called Sasquatch Diaries podcast. You can find me on YouTube. Right now, I'm still, because we're still in the beginning phases of my podcast, I'm still trying to get it up and running off the ground. And I'm sure you two can know that it's hard to get an audience. It's kind of a bit of a niche market, we'll call it.
Yes.
We're just trying to get witnesses to come out who are willing to share their story, any which way. And, for all the listeners out there, I can guarantee you that your identity will be kept secret if that's what you want. I have nothing but the utmost respect for anyone who's willing to come forward and share their testimony. We just want people to come forward and share their encounters, because we do believe that. At this point, for me personally, I wouldn't say that I do 110% beyond a reasonable doubt believe that Sasquatch exists. I think there's something out there. We just have to. We need the evidence. We need the facts, and I think by creating awareness, that's the first step.
Do you have a place where people can actually send you pictures or anything like that?
Yeah,
that they may have?
I have an Instagram account called Sasquatch Diaries Podcast. I also have a email where you can send me messages anonymously and request to be on the show, or you can contact me via YouTube as well. It's all the same platform. My email is sasquatchdiariespodcast@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram as @Sasquatch Diaries Podcast. That's where I have all of my evidence posted. I have all my episodes on my YouTube channel there. Hopefully going to get on Spotify later on in the future, but for now, YouTube is the place to be. So if you guys are interested in hearing more stories or sharing your own testimony or your own story or your own encounter, please, by all means, come forward. And you have my word that your identity will be kept secret, and you will be your story will definitely be appreciated. And that's one thing that's really stuck out to me about this podcast is I've had people tell me their stories via email or via direct message on Instagram. They won't actually come on the show because they're just a little too skittish to do so.
Right.
Yeah.
But they will share their story briefly there and just say, hey, this is what happened. I don't want to come on the show, but I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. And we always appreciate that. And I have the opportunity to share that in a video form too, or audio file or what have you.
Yeah, and I'll definitely endorse and vouch for his show, because I was doing a lot of research trying to get in, make sure this was going to be great and everything, and I just like hearing great stories.
Yeah, I do too.
Really like hearing great stories, and I was just
I've been interested in this thing since 1975.
Dude, you are going to binge on his channel.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, and I am going to check it out, Gus. I've been so busy. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah, so everybody out there, if you like these Bigfoot stories, go to his Sasquatch Diaries.
Yeah, and before I let you go, Gus, one of our viewers, Patrick McClure, put, after watching the Patterson film tonight, it looks like the Bigfoot is trying to draw attention away from a baby hiding in the background. Go watch it. It's crazy. And that's what, when I watched that years ago, that's what those people were saying, that it was trying to divert attention away from the baby Bigfoot.
Intelligence.
Yeah, which shows intelligence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Protection.
Hey, Gus, we're going to do another show down the line with you.
Absolutely. I would love to come on, and I can't thank you guys enough for having me. It's your show is fantastic too.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wait, Keith, I forgot to tell you, we're going to go on an expedition with Gus. Gus, remember I told you me and Keith are going to fly up. We're going to do a Bigfoot expedition with you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
In Canada.
So
we're going to go to LA with D. McMurray, and then we'll hit a jet up there and we'll go Bigfoot hunting with not hunting. I think we need to change the word. Yeah, we'll go on an expedition with you, guys.
Searching for Bigfoot.
Yeah, we'll search for Bigfoot with you.
We call it squatching up here.
Yes,
kind of like bird watching. We call it squatching.
Yes,
I like it.
We will come up and go squatching with you, okay?
Observe the area. Yeah, I would love to have you guys. It's honestly
fun.
It's a great place to be. There's a lot of weird activity out there, and it's nice to have some partners with me. Just in case something does happen. It's always good to have an extra set of eyes and ears, because as sometimes there's other people will notice stuff that you won't.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Gus, I'll be like Shaggy on Scooby-Doo, running for my life.
You just need a Scooby snack. That's all.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, Gus, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. We appreciate your time. And like Gus said, go check out his YouTube and his podcast. That sounds super interesting. But
thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. And
talk soon, dude.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, buddy.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
You too. Bye-bye.
Gus is awesome.
That was fun.
Gus is awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Oops. Okay, there we go.
Dude, okay.
You took go ahead and say what you're going to say, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
No, you go first.
No, I was going to say it's interesting how, when I first brought Bigfoot up to you, you're laughing and going,
I couldn't stop laughing.
And going, there's a creature like just tromping around, And then when I mentioned about it leaving gifts, you go like, what did it do? Knit a sweater or something and laid it?
I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Now.
Right. But it's I always had believed in it just because of the fact that I saw that track when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And like I was telling Gus before the show, it had 3 toes. It didn't have 5. But it was a huge, and there was 2. There was 2 prints on it. So and that's when, it was back in the 70s. No one had phones, no one had cameras, just carrying around. And then of course my uncle didn't have a camera that had film in it. So, and then through your mind, you still got that little bit of doubt.
Yeah, of course.
Like, what if it was someone who just their foot slid and made it look bigger, elongated the print? So, and now, gosh, I wish if I went back in time, I would have ran to some store and bought a camera to get a picture of that.
I just can't believe it because it is such a journey. That's why I always say this, but that's what I love about this show is I don't think that I ever had like carved out space in my mind to actually like think about a lot of this stuff. Like even with the paranormal stuff, like until 2010, when I was having those experiences, I had never really like opened up space in my head to actually believe it, right?
Yeah.
And like we've done that on this show with Bigfoot. And what's crazy is I thought there's only one way for this to be real. It has to be interdimensional. It has to be maybe extraterrestrial. There has to be something like that, right? Because lack of bones, 1 footprint, not 2, like these kind of things. But then you come across somebody like Gus, who, right? Like he believes that this is a living, breathing on this earth kind of thing. And then when you talk to him about it, you start to, they could, right? Like a bear, like Doug said, right? Like things start to come together and you're like, man, that's actually possible.
Yeah.
And even walking into the studio today, I still wasn't sold on the fact that I think it's an earthly being. And I don't know if I am, because how can we be 100% sure?
Well, we're not. And like I said, unfortunately, it's going to take someone to kill one of these creatures before it's going to be proven.
Right.
Because I think they're too smart to fall for a trap,
Right.
The best, the thing that the technology now, though, if they actually could get scat or they could get blood,
right,
then it could be tested, but it's probably very rare. If you see some blood out on a trail, you're not going to take a sample of it and go, oh, this is Bigfoot. It could be anything.
Right.
Anything. So it's almost going to have to take someone to kill one of these things or somehow trap it. But
man, one of the questions I wanted to ask him is like, and I had it written down, but how many cases of people that aren't looking for Bigfoot and then stumble across, right? Like somebody like me before the show who's like, oh, yeah, Bigfoot. And then, oh my God, there's a freaking Bigfoot.
I think it is. I think it's probably 99% of that.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I mean, a lot of times you watch these finding Bigfoot, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they find nothing.
See, I don't watch any of that crap.
They'll search, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
They might hear some kind of weird scream, but there's birds that also make weird screams. There's coyotes make weird sounds, as you know.
Yeah.
Living behind your house.
Yeah.
That could be frightening.
Oh, scary, terrifying. Mountain lions are just all of that. And it always goes to your core, and that's why I wanted to talk to him about like the telekinesis thing, because he kind of was he's done some interviews, like a lot of them, right? They're all really good. But one case, and I was also working while I was listening, but one guy was like, man, I felt like there was some sort of mind control going on there, like some telekinesis type stuff where and I think a lot of that, though, like he was saying, that's just like fear, right? Like something's around. The guy from St. Louis, dude, that story on his podcast was Unbelievable. Larry's calling. Come on, Larry. Oh, but
Larry, we'll put you on air
yeah,
if you want to.
That story is remarkable though, because the guy, he's an outdoorsman. He heard the footsteps coming down. He knew it was a 2-footed animal of some sort, right? Like it was walking. And so then I obviously thinks it's another hiker. And like I mentioned earlier, he pokes his head out. He still hears the footsteps, but he sees no light. And that's at the point where he starts thinking, okay, gets back in his stand, is like, whatever's walking through the woods doesn't need light, right? But the other thing this thing did was it started knocking on the wood with a rock.
Carrying a lantern.
Yeah. Where are you at? This thing is hitting a tree with a rock.
Yeah.
Right? So hard. The next day they go find this tree, and they actually seen the tree the day before and thought, this is such a beautiful old tree. It's massive pine tree. There was a hole in the side of this tree that wasn't there before. It was undisturbed, beautiful tree. And they picked up the rock on the ground and it fit perfectly into the wood.
Oh, really?
And dude, it had, like, so something was smashing so hard. And that's not a human doing that, right?
Right.
It's like, man, it's like well-spoken, like just great charisma. It was just a great story. And so,
I wonder if there's any means to, like, I mean, is it like a Morse code for them, or is it just like, I'm trying to find, they just hit it and they're waiting for
when that happened,
something to hit back.
When that happened, it walked across the creek and started walking up the side of the mountain, and then 2 more came down from the other side.
Oh, wow.
So it almost seems like a form of communication, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be. And intimidation.
And that's pretty smart, though. I mean, if you think about it, if you're
so smart,
several hundred yards away, like, hey, I can hit this tree pretty damn hard.
They used to do that. And they used to do.
Sound.
I mean, you think about smoke signals, and you think about, back in like the old Braveheart days, the way they communicate. They would just have callers all the way around.
Yeah.
And so it's primitive. It's but it's intelligent, and so it's just it's just fascinating. I never thought I would we start this show. I never thought.
Yeah,
I never thought I'd be wearing a Bigfoot hat in training.
Yeah, I hope Gus goes. In fact, why don't you send that link, the Art Bell link, to him?
I will. Yeah,
because it is interesting, and Bug sounds very sincere about.
He does,
this.
Dude.
Either that, or he's a super great psychopathic liar.
Yeah, but doesn't he remind you of Grandpa, like our Papa, or like somebody that's like? And that's what got me.
Art,
matter of fact, right?
Yeah,
like,
very matter of fact. And he was also,
simple.
You could hear kind of the fear in his voice when he was really scared that that he could actually go to prison. He said that when he killed it and he walked upon it, it looked human-like, maybe a deformed mountain man, but
right.
but it didn't.
Yeah.
And so he was scared to death. Man, we talked about if we could only find that map. You know what I mean?
Know.
And there's some guy, I think I told you, supposedly has a map. His name, he goes by Crypto Man.
Right.
Now, whether he's full of BS or what,
right?
Does he really have the map that Bugs left Art Bell? And also, his wife would have it. Aaron would have a copy of that map. Right. And what Aaron's doing with it, who knows?
Yeah.
But it would be interesting for someone to ask Aaron, hey,
I know,
could we get a copy of that? We would like to.
Does she go by Aaron Bell?
Aaron Bell.
Okay.
Yeah.
See what I can do.
Yeah. I mean,
hey, Patrick McClure, would you find Aaron Bell?
Yeah.
I feel like Pat would be the guy to do that.
Yeah. It's just, I'm sure, I don't know if Aaron has a Instagram, Twitter. I have no idea.
Right.
But someone, at this point, Art was scared too, because he's like, I really wish you wouldn't have sent me that map. I don't want that responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
And then I know in Art's head, he's trying to think logically about, what if this guy killed 2 people and I'm digging up these bones of these, now we got a homicide.
Yeah, definitely.
So I get Art's, hesitant.
They might not even be there anymore, though, according to the stories we heard tonight.
True.
His family members could have gone over there, taken him out, and put in some damn coyote fur because he was down in Texas, so it wouldn't be a bear.
It'd be worth a try.
It would totally be.
I mean, if you
that would even be evidence.
You could go. I mean, if he's if his map is that good and he's got X marks the spot, get a freaking bulldozer, bobcat, and just. He said he dug about 6 foot deep. Him and the guys.
Right.
And piled them one on another instead of digging 2 holes. It took too damn long. And I mean,
when you said that earlier, I didn't know that part.
What?
That they were stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
But in my head, when you said that, I was like, Bugs knew what he was doing.
Well, we didn't have time.
Yeah. God, it was cold.
Hell, the ground was hard as it was.
Yeah.
I was thinking too.
That,
it was in wintertime,
right.
and that was something I had to think: is this guy lying? Because digging, as anybody knows, when you're digging in the winter, it is hard. I mean, now can you imagine digging 6 feet?
Yeah. Here's the thing: is that he was on. I know he said it was cold, but that was right off the creek. Right off the creek, right there on the border of Mexico and Texas.
Well, he says right along Red River.
Yeah, right.
Where it fed it,
the creek,
whatever the creek.
It out.
Fed,
so, I mean, taking into account that there's moisture there and things of that nature, right? Like,
if you got 5 or 6 guys, and every one of them had a shovel in their truck, right?
Let me go get the shovel, Bugs.
Yeah, I got 5 of them. Yeah, that whole thing is just, I mean, to me, this is a very interesting show. I wish Aaron would turn this map over to somebody.
Hey, what if we did this? What if next time we do a show, maybe it's one of those things where, because I had other people reach out to me. I told you, once I started posting about it and stuff, where we invite them all and we bring Gus G on maybe. And like you said, we play that episode, we stop it, we kind of talk about some things. That we could do that.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, because I think more people need to hear that episode.
And I wouldn't care. I mean, we'd get a copyright strike, but I wouldn't care.
Screw the man.
We're not in this for the money, obviously.
Yeah. Well, so, I would tell you this though, like one thing I keep repeating in my head before every episode, and is something I actually heard on a Bigfoot research for one of our earlier ones, is lack of evidence isn't evidence.
Yeah.
So just because you don't find something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right. So that's the big piece of the puzzle I wanted to kind of find tonight and try to place is the bones thing. And I know you did too. And I asked him in advance. I said, hey, this is something we're like super curious about, right? Yeah. Dude, he provided theories that made sense.
Yeah, get it out there, Garrett. I mean, somebody knows about this map. Somebody does,
yeah. Right? I'm gonna blast it out.
Yeah. So all the Bigfoot communities, I mean, most of them I would think are familiar with this story.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're a Bigfoot enthusiast, you're like going to dig deep. Like, I want to get that map. Yeah. I'm going to get that map. And I'm going to
reach out to that journalist that hit me up.
Yeah, do that. Let's see if we can.
Yeah.
Because how cool would it be? I mean, of course, you'd have to get the permission of the people who own the land, and try to convince them. And that might be hard. I don't know.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
can we find those big?
We're gonna dig a 6 foot by probably 9 foot hole
by the creek
on your creek, but we'll fill it back in.
After we get the Bigfoot bones out.
Yeah, and then can you imagine? I mean, and then they may be worried about. Can you imagine? Let's say they did find bones. How many people would be out there? I mean, constantly taking pictures, sneaking on their land.
Yeah, we gotta be strategic here. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
we gotta find that map.
That could be. What if we? How cool would it be if we did a live doing that?
We're going to do some lives, I think, in the future, Keith. We're going to talk after the show.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And anyway, what a cool story. And we want to thank Gus G again.
Sasquatch Diaries.
You guys check it out.
How nice is he? I told you, huh?
Super nice guy.
Yeah,
great guy.
Great vibes.
And I'm in that Bigfoot camp, and I know you are now.
I'm heavily
for
in
about
it.
a year.
My big feet march right in there.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing is that you were such a non-believer. Because of you, we've done 3-4 Bigfoot shows, right?
And more.
Which I don't mind doing it because I like them.
I can't wrap my head around it. It's
like, I know.
It's
there's
just
too many sightings. It's like too many sightings for it not to be true. And would you agree that there's more UFO sightings than there are Bigfoot sightings?
Yeah, and I'm not past the idea that there is some sort of connection there, man. And furthermore,
right, we just don't know. It could be an interdimensional creature. That's. I mean, if of course people lie, but the story I heard about the lady who saw the UFO and then a Bigfoot comes walking out.
Dude,
of the woods.
Guy, Todd.
A lot of people believe it.
Todd Standings, the guy that made the documentary, and his wife worked in Vancouver. You got the picture. He mentions that actually in Gus's interview with him. A lot of people say that.
What's his belief about it?
I can't remember. I can't remember, but again, I'm working listening to these things, but that stood out to me because that's something, Keith, that you said from the moment we started talking about Bigfoot, is that you felt like it's odd that there's oftentimes sightings of UFOs, and then a freaking Bigfoot walks out, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want to keep you up all night. I see you keep looking over there.
I know it's not like we got a commercial break or anything.
Here's what I wanted to just throw out there. Last thing for me, okay? Because we didn't touch on this. Is the next step, I think, for me, because we've gone from the extraterrestrial side to the biological side, right? Now is like the spiritual side of it. And I've mentioned this to you a couple of times because I heard the Native American on the show say, Bigfoot presents himself as just a spirit, and a spirit will present themselves however they want, right? And we've talked a lot about that show on this show, excuse me.
Yep.
And so I just want to throw that out there. Like, we can't close the doors on anything until we've figured it out.
We can't.
Which I have a feeling you and I are going to crack the case.
We crack every case.
Zodiac, we did it all, dude. Black Dahlia, figured them all out.
Yep. We've cracked every case there is.
Great Bigfoot show. Thank you.
Great show. Thank you guys for coming on. Also, next week there will not be a show because Garrett's going to Florida.
I'm gonna be looking for the Florida skunk guy.
The what?
That's dude. So Bigfoot in Florida, it's called Florida skunk or something like that.
Yeah.
Look it up.
All right, we'll come back with some Bigfoot footage from Florida.
I will.
So again, we're not going to be on next week. We'll have the show the following week. Garrett and I haven't decided yet what that's going to be. I want to do something scary.
Yes.
I think I told you guys a few weeks ago we were going to do the Summer Wells case, but there's so many people covering that. Chris McDonough, I think is his name, probably is your one-stop shop for that. I mean, he had access to the father, the mother, going to the house, going through the house, and he's pretty much. I mean, the guy has 16,000 people in his chat room.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and good for the little girl.
Yeah. Right? So hopefully they'll find this little girl.
Hey, I want to do something real scary.
I do too. What I'd like to do is, and we've talked about this before, is get a priest who's performed an exorcist and talk us through it. Some of the stories. There's I know of a couple that probably could get to come on. They're somewhat famous people, but they will usually do podcasts.
Yeah.
So I may reach out. So that might be something we'll cover.
And if you guys have any ideas, shoot them over.
Yeah, if you guys have ideas, what would you like to into the paranormal world? And we're going to do true crime every once in a while, but this is really our forte. There's so many, like I said, we can pick Barry Morphew, all this stuff, but it's being covered so much that it's,
well, and this is really what drives us. I mean, like, even in the true crime stuff, we're constantly reaching. Yeah. Like, that's like our personalities.
Yeah.
And so
I like a good mystery.
Love a good mystery.
Love a good mystery, but it's like when they're the frustrating thing is when they're unsolved, it's just like we can say we think this, but we never find out.
Right.
But anyway, we'd love to do.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. Should I put that up there?
Yeah,
good, because I mean, Pat, that's like I said, when I started this channel, that's
Skunk Ape.
Yeah, it was my idea to have. I had so many paranormal experiences happen to me as I was growing up, and before I even did this, I thought, even if I found like some local people to meet at the library or a coffee shop, and we all share ideas about what is this thing that happens to us when we die, what happens,
right?
Not that we'll ever figure it out, but it's very interesting to hear people's paranormal stories, their personal stories.
Honestly, Keith, I wouldn't mind doing and I bring this up because this morning I was running a session, and it's an older kid, and he said, man, I was listening to your show, and underneath it, like, I was just listening to it, I was doing things. It went on to another thing, and it was about NDEs. He didn't know what those were.
Oh.
And he was telling me just this story about what he was describing was a life review. Mm-hmm. A kid had passed away in a life review, right? That's what I was telling him. I'm talking to my high school kid about this shit, right? Mm-hmm. But he brought it up, and so, but an NDE part 2 wouldn't be bad, and I'll tell you why. Because isn't that the scariest thing to everybody?
Yeah,
I mean, that is like the scariest thing to everybody, right? What happens when we die?
And doing another NDE, like, I mean, we had some people calling, and that was all well and good. I'd like to get somebody that we could talk to for an hour.
Absolutely.
That had, that indie experience and described us everything,
change it. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out, I mean, there's authors out there. It's just like, but can we get access to them with our little YouTube show,
our family,
our humble abode,
our
here.
Family, man. I love
our
it.
family. Yeah. I mean, it's, hey,
everyone knows each other. I love this.
Yeah. And I don't care. I mean, I love our people. It's like we have a quaint little audience. We have an exclusive little group. And it's like I said, my goal was to, like, we're all just sitting around on the couch, drinking coffee, drinking a beer, just talking paranormal stuff.
Yeah, Bigfoots.
Yeah, Bigfoots.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
I think Garrett could start a channel just about Bigfoots.
I told Taylor the other night. She's like, "What's your next tattoo?" She's like, "What's your next tattoo gonna be?"
DB Cooper's what you said.
I didn't say DB Cooper, but then I had this idea. I was like, "What if I did a Bigfoot all the way up the side of my body, like that?" And then hang on. When I raised my hand, it was shooting a what are those? Roman candle.
A Roman.
Okay. So can that be our next? You guys go ahead, give to the fund, the tattoo fund.
Yeah. So all you guys, you see the Cash App, the PayPal me.
I will get a Bigfoot.
I don't think anybody wants to. I don't know. Maybe. Do you guys want to donate for Garrett? You know what that would cost you? It cost you over $1,000.
I better hope that my business does well, because I'll never get a job.
You better.
Great show tonight.
Well, if you're covered up, they'll never see it.
True.
Just wear long sleeve shirts.
I don't have a big tattoo all over my body.
You got a good business, man. I don't think you got anything to worry about.
Okay, I'll get the Bigfoot tattoo then.
Hey, there's Gus. Thanks for having me, Jens. This was awesome. Right back at you. It was very awesome. And man, this is the stuff I like doing.
Loved it.
I love the paranormal stuff.
I'm like invigorated by it. Like it's awesome, man. It gets my mind going.
Yeah, I know there's some people here for true crime, and I mean it's gets a little depressing.
It's hard.
Yeah, when you're talking about children who've been murdered, and it's like, oh, so I mean, because we having children and your children, my grandchildren, that's who you think of.
Yeah, you can't help it.
And it's just it's almost depressing. I mean, I am interested in it, and I won't, we could do a show here and there, but this is really my forte. This is something I can sit here. As you can see, we're already at almost 2 hours. Well, we are at 2 hours, but comfortably could you just bring up a subject and we could just wrap through the whole show. Now with true crime, we can't do a point, but you got all these fact checkers. I mean, if we miss one little thing, then you got all that hate in the chat going, that's not right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God. Like when we remember the first Delphi show we did, it was brutal.
You're insane.
It was brutal. Those people were like, no, it wasn't. That was wrong.
Like, sorry, we're having a conversation. God.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one thing if they want to correct us, and that's fine. I'm all about, if you guys know something I don't, put it in there, it's fine, but don't be hateful about it.
Well, and if you know something I don't, then I would be interested to hear what it is, because I doubt you do.
Oh, woo. And with that, all right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome.
We appreciate you guys. Like I said, I love every one of you guys. We see the same people, which is awesome. And you know what? It's like, I'm happy with our 27
I love it.
that show up all the time. It's like our little own family, and you guys rock. We really appreciate you. And if we didn't, we wouldn't do this.
Absolutely.
So,
well, we might.
Well, we might do it for no one, right? Just sit around and
Hey, we didn't even mention your flamingo Hawaiian shirt you're wearing today.
Oh yeah,
that is amazing.
That's my new thing, is Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah,
I've got 3 now.
Larry's favorite animal.
Is it really?
Yes.
Hey, I wonder, was Larry? Did you get a hold? Was he trying to call in to make a comment?
No, we've been trying to get a hold of each other for like 2 days.
Okay, so that's all it was. Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, we are going to let you go.
Good night.
And thank you so much for showing up. We really do appreciate it. We don't take it lightly. It's really cool that you guys are taking 2 hours out of your night for a couple of knuckleheads talking about paranormal.
A couple Bigfoots.
A couple, and whatnot. So, all right, you